The Science of Evil, On Empathy and the Origins of Cruelty, by Simon Baron-Cohen. Narrated by Jonathan Cowley. Copyright 2011 by Simon Baron-Cohen. This unabridged audiobook is published by arrangement with Simon Baron-Cohen and Brockman Incorporated, and was produced in the year 2011 by Tantor Media Incorporated, which holds the copyright thereto. 1. Explaining Evil and Human Cruelty. When I was 7 years old, my father told me the Nazis had turned Jews into lampshades. Just one of those comments that you hear once, and the thought never goes away. To a child's mind, even to an adult's, these two types of things just don't belong together. He also told me the Nazis turned Jews into bars of soap. It sounds so unbelievable, yet it is actually true. I knew our family was Jewish, so this image of turning people into objects felt a bit close to home. My father also told me about one of his former girlfriends, Ruth Goldblatt, whose mother had survived the concentration camp. He had been introduced to the mother and was shocked to discover that her hands were reversed. Nazi scientists had severed Mrs. Goldblatt's hands, switched them around, and sewn them on again so that if she put her hands out palms down, her thumbs were on the outside and her little fingers were on the inside. Just one of the many experiments they had conducted. I realized there was a paradox at the heart of human nature. People could objectify others, that my young mind was not yet ready to figure out. Years later, I was teaching at St. Mary's Hospital Medical School in London. I sat in on a lecture on physiology. The professor was teaching about human adaptation to temperature. He told the students that the best data available on human adaptation to extreme cold had been collected by Nazi scientists performing immersion experiments on Jews and other inmates of Dachau concentration camp, whom they put into vats of freezing water. They collected systematic data on how heart rate correlated with duration of time in the water at 0 degrees centigrade. Hearing about this unethical research re-triggered that same question in my mind. How can humans treat other people as objects? How do humans come to switch off their natural feelings of sympathy for another human being who is suffering? These examples are particularly shocking because they involve educated doctors and scientists, professions we are brought up to trust, performing unethical experiments or operations. Let's assume generously that these doctors were not being cruel for the sake of it, that the scientists doing the immersion experiments wanted to contribute to medical knowledge, to know, for example, how to help victims rescued after being shipwrecked in icy seas. Even the Nazi doctors who had sewn poor Mrs. Goldblatt's hands back to front may not, I assume, have been motivated to do cruel things for cruelty's sake. They too were presumably following their scientific impulse, wanting to understand how to test the limits of microsurgical procedures. What these scientists lost sight of in their quest for knowledge was the humanity of their subjects. It is an irony that the human sciences describe their object of study as subjects because this implies sensitivity to the feelings of the person being studied. In practice, the feelings of the subjects in these experiments were of no concern. Nazi laws defined Jews as genetically subhuman and ordered their extermination as part of the eugenics program of the time. Within this political framework, using the inmates of concentration camps as subjects in medical research might even have seemed to these doctors to be ethical if it contributed knowledge for the greater good. Cruelty for its own sake was a part of ordinary Nazi guards' behavior. Sadly, there is no shortage of horrific examples, but I have selected just one from the biography of Thomas Bergenthal. At just 9 years old, Thomas was rounded up with thousands of Jews and taken to Auschwitz. There he had to watch while an inmate was forced to hang his friend who had tried to escape. An SS guard ordered the inmate to put a noose around his friend's neck. The man couldn't fulfill the order because his hands were shaking so much with fear and distress. His friend turned to him, took the noose, and, in a remarkable act, kissed his friend's hand and then put the noose around his own neck. Angrily, the SS guard kicked the chair away from under the man to be hanged. 9-year-old Thomas and the other inmates, watching the man kissing his friend's hand, rejoiced at that simple act that said without words, "I will not let my friend be forced to kill me." Thomas survived
Sample complete. Ready to continue?